Babe Ruth entered the league in 1914, and back then, Major League Baseball just didn't give out the awards that we take for granted today. This series is about evaluating each season of Babe Ruth's career to determine what awards he could have captured along the way. With this video, we pick up in 1917, which would be Ruth's final season of pitching full-time. Thus far, I've determined that if the Rookie of the Year award had been around in 1915, Ruth would have been a runaway winner. But the 1916 vote for the Cy Young Award would not be nearly as easy. Ruth and Walter Johnson were both very deserving of this award, but in the end, I felt that Ruth just barely edges out Johnson. Then I looked at the 1916 World Series to see if Ruth could have won the Most Valuable Player award. He threw a 14-inning complete game in Game 2 of the World Series, a feat that still stands as a World Series record today. But I think if the award had been given, it would have been given to pitcher Ernie Shore, who won both games 1 and 5 of the series. With that little recap behind us, let's look at the 1917 season and try to figure out who would have won the American League Cy Young Award. In coming up with a list of candidates, I looked at the top 10 in both Baseball Reference WAR and Fangraphs WAR. And I have to say that after walking through this process, I'm not so sure about Fangraphs WAR. Fangraphs uses FIP, or Fielding Independent Pitching, as a baseline, and based on this analysis, I'm not so sure that it works very well. That's just a little side note, so take it or leave it. To get started, I look at Baseball Reference and consult 26 major categories. Then I look to determine who finished first in those categories, who finished second, who had a top 5 finish, and who had a top 10 finish. This really enables us to be able to sift through this list. There are 5 guys who jump out immediately that really don't belong as a Cy Young candidate. And here's one example of why Fangraphs WAR doesn't look so great to me. They have Klepfer ranked number 6 in Fangraphs WAR and Ruth ranked number 7. Now look at Ruth and look at Klepfer. I mean, it's not even close, and we're going to toss Klepfer in this first group of 5. And now that we're down to 8 players, we're going to toss 2 more in Leonard and Russell. You can see that 6 players finish in the top 5 in at least 14 of the 26 major categories, whereas Leonard and Russell only finish in 8 and 7 respectively. And then we come to Carl Mays. While he posted a 1.74 ERA, which is good enough for second in the league, you can see with these 6 candidates that Mays finishes last in 4 of these 5 categories. And that leaves us with 5 solid candidates for the AL Cy Young Award: Eddie Sitcott, Jim Bagby, Stan Kowaleski, Walter Johnson, and Babe Ruth. The top line for each player represents the traditional pitching line with wins, ERA, and strikeouts. Everything in red indicates they led the league in this category. By the way, that This Great Game website that I referred to earlier, they list how they would rank the players during each season. You'll notice I've placed a line under Ruth's name. The 3 players above it are exactly how they ranked them. We'll see if I agree. First of all, Eddie Sitcott dominated the American League in 1917. This is not a nail-biter. He clearly deserves the Cy Young Award. Not only did he lead the league in wins and ERA, but he led the league in innings pitched, ERA plus, WHIP, and in total, out of the 26 categories that I analyzed, he led the league in 13. That is complete domination. It's a bit puzzling, but Fangraphs WAR only ranks him as number 2. Nevertheless, the knuckleballer clearly deserves this award. And if you think you recognize Eddie Sitcott's name, it's probably because you do. He was one of the players associated with the Black Sox scandal. And I didn't find it difficult to decide who would come in second. Stan Kowaleski had dominated stuff during this season. He led the league in shutouts and hits per 9. Those are the 2 categories that Ruth led the league in the prior season. Of this bunch, he's also got the lowest ERA. He's got the second best ERA plus in the league. And if you think his 19 wins are a little bit of a knock on him, well, he ranks second in both adjusted pitching wins and win probability added. So we've determined that Ruth's not going to win the Cy Young. He's not even going to be the runner-up, but is he going to finish in 3rd, 4th, or 5th? Because Ruth, Bagby, and Johnson all present compelling cases for finishing 3rd, I've added the items in blue that represent when they finished 2nd in the league in that statistic. They all finished in the top 5 in 16 of 26 categories. That shows you how close this is. You'll notice that Ruth has a slight edge by finishing in the top 10 22 times. And I decided just to take a look at when each person finished 1st or 2nd in a category and how the other guys ranked up against them. For example, Ruth led the league in complete games with 35. Bagby came in 5th, Johnson came in 2nd. I've got to be honest, I didn't find this too helpful, as we already know that Johnson dominates in strikeouts, and that's the big thing that this slide shows. When it gets really tough, I try to remember to keep things simple. A pitcher's job is to keep runners off base, to keep runners from scoring, and to put their team in a position to win. These three tables try to represent those ideas. I've included FIP on the top left table because it's all about home run prevention, walk prevention, and it factors in the strikeout, which is why Walter Johnson is ranked number 1. For me, there are two big takeaways from this slide. Number 1, Ruth appears in every single box in the top 10. And number 2, when you look at ERA, Johnson doesn't finish in the top 10 in either ERA or ERA+. And in the bottom chart, he finishes dead last in all of the advanced metrics when it comes to wins. Adjusted pitching wins, win probability added, championship win probability added, and base out wins saved. I think I've got to eliminate Johnson and determine that he should come in 5th. Because I'm really visual, I then put Ruth and Bagby side by side. I highlighted when they're the league leader in yellow, when they came in 2nd, it's in maroon, and when they came in 3rd, I put it in gray. After I did that, I was able to see that their statistics were virtually identical in ERA, wins, win-loss percentage, whip, innings pitched, games started, batters faced, FIP, baseball reference WAR, and runs allowed per 9 innings. Ruth has the edge when it comes to hits per 9, a big edge in strikeouts, and a big edge in complete games. Bagby has an edge in shutouts, ERA+, and baseball WAR for pitchers. Then I really tried to simplify it. Batters only hit .213 against Ruth, 22 points lower than Bagby. They also had a more difficult time slugging against Ruth, and of course the OPS is also a lot lower for Ruth. In the end, I had to side with Ruth, as Ruth is just simply harder to hit, harder to slug against, he has more strikeout ability, and a big factor was he had 9 more complete games. So I'm going to say if the Cy Young Award had been held in 1917, Ruth would have probably finished in 3rd place. The guys from this great game had the same top 3 that I did. Seacott came in 1st, Kovaleski in 2nd, and Ruth in 3rd. They even had Bagby finishing in 4th. The only difference is we flipped Mays and Johnson. Remember, Mays was the last guy I cut before I reduced to 5, so he finished in 6th for me. Johnson finished in 5th. These guys flipped those two. But we agreed on the top 6 players, and we agreed with the order of the top 4. Well, I hope you're enjoying this series on the Great Bambino. Next up, the 1918 season. Thanks for watching, and I appreciate it when you like the video and when you subscribe to my channel.